That autumn morning last year, I stood frozen in my kitchen, the bitter scent of burnt toast curling around me, the tick of the old clock slicing through the silence. The sunlight spilled across the counter where my kids once scratched out their dreams in crayon, but the house felt hollow, like it was holding its breath for a truth I wasn't ready to face. I didn't know it was the last morning I'd hear my daughter's bright laugh echo down the hall, or feel my husband's kiss brush my cheek, faint as a memory already slipping away. My family, the ones I'd stitched my soul into, were drifting beyond my reach, and I was too lost in love to see the fracture forming. This is my story, a raw, unraveling confession of a mother who watched her family forget her, fading into a ghost in the home we built together. The pain is a quiet thief, stealing pieces of you in whispers, a dull ache like a bruise you don't remember getting. I lived for them, my son's crooked grin as he tied his sneakers wrong, my daughter's endless whys that lit up my world, my husband's steady hand anchoring mine. But somehow, I became a stranger in their eyes. Was it me? Did I hold too tight or let go too soon? I trace every memory hunting for the moment it all cracked, but it's like chasing shadows in a storm. The worst is the question that claws at me. What broke their love for me, leaving me knocking on a locked door in my own life? It started with a letter I found that night, tucked under a pile of bills, its words sharp enough to cut through years of trust. I said something in the dark hours that followed, something I can't undo, and it set everything in motion. I won't tell you what it was, not yet. But it's the splinter in my heart, the key to why I'm standing here, invisible to the ones I'd die for. Stay with me through these 10 chapters, and I'll lay bare the truth of losing the people who were my everything, and what it's like to fight to be seen again. If you've ever felt your heart break quietly, if you've ever wondered where you fit in the lives you love, this story is for you. Please hit that like button, share your own struggles in the comments. Your voice matters. Subscribe because we're in this together, piecing ourselves back together, one truth at a time. That autumn morning, the coffee pot shook in my hands, its bitter steam mixing with the acrid sting of burnt toast clawing at my throat. Ellie's laugh, wild, jagged, like a spark flaring in a pitch-black room, cut through the house from her bedroom down the hall. It was the sound I'd clung to through sleepless nights, a lullaby I'd memorized to keep myself sane. I didn't know it was the last time I'd hear it, that it would soon be replaced by a silence sharp enough to carve me hollow. The kitchen was a stage, sunlight slicing through the blinds, spotlighting the counter where my kids used to scrawl their dreams in crayon. Now, it was just me, standing in a house that felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for something to shatter. I called for Ellie to hurry, my voice tight, frayed with a dread I couldn't pin down. "Ellie, you're gonna miss the bus." Her laugh stopped, abrupt as a snapped wire, and she appeared in the doorway, her eyes cold, like I was a stranger intruding on her morning. She brushed past me, her shoulder grazing mine, leaving a chill that settled deep in my bones. Nate shuffled in next, his sneakers flapping, laces trailing like afterthoughts. "Got a test," he muttered, eyes locked on his phone, fingers scrolling through a world that didn't include me. I reached to tie his laces, a reflex from years of mothering, but he jerked away, his glare a warning. "Don't." My hands froze, useless, as he grabbed his backpack and turned away. Tom came last, his briefcase swinging like a pendulum marking time we didn't have. His kiss grazed my cheek, faint as a ghost's breath, already fading before I could hold it. He didn't look back, just walked out, the door's slam echoing like a gunshot in my chest. I stood there, coffee cooling in my hands, the house too quiet, like it knew something I didn't. Later, packing Ellie's lunch, my fingers brushed a crumpled note in her backpack. "Meet me at the park, don't tell Mom." The words hit like a fist, twisting my gut. Who was she meeting? Why the secrecy? I stuffed the note in my pocket, pretending it was nothing, but it burned there, a quiet accusation. That night, I heard Ellie's voice through her door, sharp and secretive, whispering into her phone. "Nobody, Mom." "God!" she snapped when I knocked, her words slicing through the wood. The door slammed, locking me out, and I stood in the dim hallway, my heart pounding against the silence. The house felt alive, its walls pressing in, holding secrets I couldn't crack. I lay awake, replaying Ellie's cold eyes, Nate's rejection, Tom's distant kiss. Was it me? Had I loved them too hard or not enough? The note in my pocket felt heavier, a clue to a puzzle I was too scared to solve. My family was slipping away, and I was already fading into a ghost in my own home, grasping at shadows I couldn't hold. The letter was a blade, hidden under a pile of unpaid bills, its edges frayed like a secret worn raw from being held too long. It was late, the kids asleep, Tom still out, the house creaking under the weight of its own silence. I found it by accident, digging through the mess on the dining table, my fingers brushing the paper like it was waiting for me. The words hit like a slap. I can't keep this from her anymore. We need to tell her. No signature, no context, just a jagged tear through the life I thought I knew. Who was her, me, or someone else, pulling my family into a world I wasn't part of? The ink seemed to pulse, daring me to unravel its truth. I sat there, the letter trembling in my hands, the dining room's shadows stretching long and thin across the walls. The clock ticked, relentless, each second a reminder of Tom's absence. When he finally came home, tie loose, eyes heavy with something he wouldn't name, I held up the letter, my voice sharp. "What is this?" He froze, his jaw tight, then mumbled, "Work stuff." But his voice cracked, a lie so thin I could see through it. I pressed, but he turned away, leaving me with the letter's weight and a growing dread that coiled in my chest like smoke. I didn't sleep, the words looping in my mind like a broken record. We need to tell her. Was it about me? Had I become the thing they whispered about, the obstacle in their lives? At breakfast, Nate wouldn't look at me, his crooked grin replaced by a blank stare. "Nothing's wrong," he said, shoving his cereal bowl away, the milk sloshing like my own unsteady heart. I wanted to grab him, shake him, beg him to see me, but he was already gone, out the door without a word. Ellie's room was a fortress, her door locked when I tried to say goodnight. I heard her sobs, muffled but raw through the wood, and I pressed my hand to the door, willing it to open. It didn't. The letter stayed in my pocket all day, a burning coal against my skin. I carried it like a wound, its words festering, feeding my paranoia. Was Tom hiding something bigger, an affair, a betrayal? Or was it about the kids, something they'd all agreed to keep from me? I replayed every moment, searching for the crack where my family had started to fracture. The house felt different now, its walls watching, its silence mocking me. I was fading, becoming a ghost in their lives, my love a weight they no longer wanted. By nightfall, I stood in the kitchen, staring at the counter where Ellie's laugh had once lived, now silent. The letter was a map to a truth I wasn't ready for, but I couldn't stop turning it over in my mind, each word a step toward something I feared I'd never survive. The distance crept in like frost on a windowpane, silent but sharp, slicing me every time I reached for them. It wasn't one moment, but 1,000 tiny cuts, glances that didn't land, hands that pulled away. My family was slipping through my fingers, and I was too scared to name the why of it. The kitchen, once warm with Ellie's laughter, was now a cold stage. Sunlight cutting across the counter like a blade, exposing the emptiness where my kids' dreams used to live. I stood there, coffee gone bitter in my mug, wondering when I'd become invisible. Tom stopped touching me, his hand lying limp on the couch during our rare nights together, his eyes fixed on some distant horizon that didn't include me. I'd reach for him, my fingers grazing his sleeve, but he'd shift, subtle but deliberate, leaving me grasping at air. In Nate's room, I found a photo from our beach trip years ago. Ellie's gap-toothed grin, Nate's sandy knees, my arm around them both. Now it was torn at the edges, shoved in a drawer like a memory he wanted to erase. I held it, my throat tight, wondering what I'd done to make him hide us away. Ellie was a ghost in her own way, slipping out after school with her backpack slung low, her voice clipped. "Don't wait up," she muttered, her eyes rolling when I asked where she was going. "You wouldn't get it," she added, the words a slap I felt for hours. I baked Nate's favorite chocolate chip cookies, desperate to see his crooked grin, to pull him back to me. He took one, his jaw tight, and left the rest to harden on the counter, their sweetness turning stale like my hope. I stood over the tray, my hands shaking, wondering if I'd lost him to something I couldn't see. Late at night, I heard Tom in his study, his voice a low murmur through the door. "She's not ready for this." My heart sank, heavy with dread, the letter's words echoing in my mind. Who wasn't ready? Me? What truth was he hiding? I pressed my ear to the door, but the words blurred, leaving only the sting of exclusion. The house was a maze now, its halls twisting with secrets, its silence a weight that pressed against my chest. I lay awake, replaying Tom's distance, Ellie's dismissal, Nate's rejection. Was it my fault? Had I loved them too fiercely, my care a chain they wanted to break? The question clawed at me, relentless, as I stood in the dark, the photo still in my hand. My family was building a life without me, and I didn't know how to stop it. The kitchen clock ticked, relentless, counting down to something I couldn't face. Have you ever felt the people you love slip through your fingers, like you're screaming into a void? Share your pain below. I need to know I'm not alone, that someone else has felt this kind of quiet, crushing loss. The air was thick that Friday night, rain drumming against the windows like a pulse I couldn't ignore. The letter's weight had festered in my pocket all week, its words, "We need to tell her." A splinter I couldn't pull out. I couldn't hold it in anymore, couldn't keep pretending the cracks in my family weren't real. So I let the words slip, raw and reckless, and they shattered everything, leaving me to pick up the pieces in a house that no longer felt like mine. I stood in the kitchen, the letter trembling in my hand, its edges curling like a confession. Tom was at the sink, his back to me, washing dishes with a focus that felt like avoidance. "Who is she?" I demanded, my voice breaking, sharp with fear and fury. He froze, the sponge dripping in his hand, his face pale as he turned. "It's not what you think," he said, but his eyes slid away, landing anywhere but on me. The lie was a blade cutting deeper than the letter itself, and I felt the ground shift, the kitchen tilting under my feet. Ellie burst through the doorway, her eyes red, tears streaming. "Why can't you leave it alone, Mom, she screamed, her voice a jagged edge that tore through me. Before I could answer, she ran out into the storm, her sneakers slapping against the wet pavement. I chased her, rain soaking my hair, my voice hoarse as I called her name into the dark. "Ellie, please!" But the night swallowed her, leaving me standing in the street, my heart pounding with the terror that I'd lost her for good. The rain mixed with my tears, blurring the world into a smear of regret. Back inside, drenched and shaking, I faced Tom again. He confessed, his voice low, that the letter was from his sister, about his mother's failing health. "She's dying," he said, but his pause, that half-second of hesitation, made me doubt every word. I wanted to believe him, to cling to the life we'd built, but the truth felt slippery, like trying to hold water in my hands. Then I said it, words I can't take back, born of fear and betrayal. "I don't trust you anymore." They hung in the air, heavy, final, a line we couldn't uncross. Tom's face crumpled, but he didn't fight back, just walked away, leaving me in the kitchen, the rain still dripping from my clothes. The house was silent, but it screamed with what I'd done. I'd pushed Ellie out, driven a wedge deeper between me and Tom, and Nate was nowhere, already lost to his own world. The letter was just a spark, but my words were the fire, burning down the fragile trust we had left. I stood there, alone, wondering if I'd broken us beyond repair, if my need to know had cost me everything I loved. Ellie's chair sat empty at the dining table, a ghost that mocked me every time I passed. She'd texted she was at a friend's, but the vagueness of a friend was a knife twisting in my gut. The house was a graveyard now, each room heavy with the absence of my daughter, her laughter replaced by a silence that screamed louder than any fight. I was losing her, and the harder I clung, the faster she slipped away, leaving me to wonder if my love was the thing pushing her out the door. I found her journal under her bed, its pages crumpled, filled with angry scrawl. "Mom doesn't get it. She never will." Each word was a blade, cutting through the mother I thought I was. I sat on her floor, the carpet rough against my palms, reading her rage, her pain, her need to escape me. I wanted to scream, to tear the pages out, but they were true, and that truth burned worse than any lie. Nate was no better, skipping dinner again, his excuse, stuff to do, a flimsy wall between us. His absence was a silence that echoed louder than any argument we'd ever had. Tom and I fought in whispers, the house creaking around us like it was listening. "There's no one else," he swore, his hands clenched, but his eyes darted, betraying him. I wanted to believe him, to rebuild the trust I'd shattered, but doubt was a poison seeping into every word. I drove to Ellie's school, desperate to see her, to fix this. Through the fence, I saw her laughing with a girl I didn't know, her face bright, alive in a way it hadn't been at home. It was a glimpse of a life I wasn't part of, and it broke me. That night, I sat alone at the dining table, staring at Ellie's empty chair, its wood worn from years of her fidgeting. Had I loved her too fiercely, my care a weight she couldn't bear? The question clawed at me, relentless, as the clock ticked, marking time I couldn't get back. I traced the table's grain, remembering dinners filled with her questions, Nate's grin, Tom's hand in mine. Now, it was just me, the silence a mirror reflecting my failure. What do you do when the ones you live for build a world that doesn't include you? Tell me in the comments. I'm begging for answers, for some way to pull them back before they're gone forever. I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror, and the woman staring back was a stranger, hollow eyes, cheekbones sharp with grief, a face carved by the failure of losing my family. I hated her, this ghost wearing my skin, for letting them slip away, for becoming invisible in the home I'd poured my soul into. The house was a cage now, its walls closing in, each creak a reminder that I was alone, fighting a battle I was already losing. I called Ellie's friend's mom, my voice cracking like thin ice. "She's fine," she said, her tone clipped, "but she doesn't want to come home." The words were a punch, caving in my chest, leaving me gasping in the kitchen's dim light. Nate came home late, reeking of cigarette smoke, his eyes hard as stones. "Why do you care now, yo?" he snapped when I asked where he'd been, his words slicing through me. I stood there, speechless, as he stormed to his room, the door slam a final rejection. On Tom's laptop, I found an email he hadn't bothered to hide well, setting a meeting with someone named Claire. The name burned, a spark igniting my paranoia, fanning it into a blaze. Was she the her from the letter, the one pulling Tom away? I tried talking to Nate, asking about his day, desperate for a connection. "You're not my mom anymore, pig," he said, his voice cold, his eyes locking onto mine with a finality that broke me. I stumbled back, the air sucked out of the room, his words echoing in my skull. In bed, I reached for Tom's hand, a reflex from years of love, but he turned away, his back a wall I couldn't climb. The house hummed, its silence mocking me, amplifying the chaos in my head. I stood before the mirror again, staring at the stranger I'd become. Was this my fault? Had I pushed them away, my love a noose they'd slipped out of? The email, the letter, Nate's words, they were pieces of a puzzle I couldn't solve, each one cutting deeper, leaving me bleeding out in the dark. I was losing myself, dissolving into the shadows of a life I thought I'd built, and the mirror showed me a truth I couldn't face. I was as gone as they were. I couldn't live with the questions anymore, each one a splinter driving deeper into my heart. I needed answers, even if they tore me apart, so I followed Tom into the night, chasing shadows I wasn't sure I wanted to catch. The car's headlights cut through the dark, my hands trembling on the wheel as I trailed him to a quiet cafe, its neon sign flickering like a warning. Inside, he sat with Claire, her face vaguely familiar, like a ghost from a life I'd forgotten. My stomach churned, betrayal a bitter taste in my mouth. Through the cafe's window, I watched them, their heads close, her hand brushing his arm. The intimacy was a knife twisting in my gut, cutting away the last threads of trust. Was this the truth behind the letter, the reason my family was slipping away? I sat in the car, rain smearing the windshield, my breath fogging the glass as I fought the urge to storm in, to scream. Instead, I drove home. The image burned into my mind, a wound I couldn't close. At home, I confronted Tom, my voice low but sharp. "Who's Claire?" He sighed, his eyes tired. "My therapist," he said. "It's about us, not an affair." His words were plausible, but his hesitation, that flicker of doubt, made me question everything. I wanted to believe him, to rebuild the life we'd had, but the letter's words, "We need to tell her," echoed, mocking me. Ellie came home then, unexpected, her eyes swollen. She hugged me, her body trembling, then pulled back. "I don't know how to fix us," she whispered, her voice breaking. I found our wedding photo in Tom's wallet later, creased but cherished, a relic of a love I wasn't sure we still had. For a moment, I wanted to believe we could go back, that the cafe, the letter, were just missteps. But doubt was a shadow clinging to me, whispering that the truth was bigger, sharper than I could handle. The house was silent, but its walls seemed to pulse with secrets, each one a step toward a reckoning I wasn't ready for. I stood in the kitchen, the clock ticking, and wondered if chasing shadows had only led me deeper into the dark. The house was a crypt, its rooms heavy with silence that choked me, every corner holding words we wouldn't say. I reached for my family, but they were a puzzle with pieces I couldn't force together, each attempt leaving me more alone. The kitchen, once alive with Ellie's laugh, was now a tomb, the clock's tick a heartbeat mocking my failure. I was drowning in the quiet, grasping for a lifeline that wasn't there, my love a weight they seemed desperate to shake off. Ellie started therapy, her counselor pushing for family sessions. "Not with Mom," she told Tom, her words a fresh wound, sharp and deep. I overheard her, standing outside her room, my hand pressed to the door, willing it to open. It didn't. Nate came home with bruised knuckles, the stench of a fight clinging to him. "You wouldn't understand," he told Tom, his voice low, cutting me out as I stood in the shadows. I wanted to grab him, demand he see me, but his eyes were cold, a stranger's. I found another letter, this one from Ellie to Tom, tucked in his desk drawer. Make Mom stop pushing me. Stop what? Loving her? Caring too much? The words were a maze, leading nowhere, each one a stab of confusion. I clutched the paper, my hands shaking, the house's silence pressing against my chest. Tom and I sat that night, the TV flickering, its light casting shadows that danced like ghosts. We need to talk, he said, but the words died, swallowed by the quiet that suffocated us both. In my dreams, Ellie's laugh filled the kitchen, bright and wild, but I woke to silence, the weight of it crushing me. I stood in the hallway, staring at the mirror, the stranger's face staring back, mocking my failure. The letter, the silence, Nate's bruises. They were clues to a truth I couldn't grasp, a story I was no longer part of. I was fighting a war I couldn't win, each day carving me hollower, leaving me to wonder if I'd ever been enough for them. I couldn't pretend anymore, couldn't keep stitching together a life that was unraveling. So I called them together, my voice trembling, ready to break or be broken. The dining table was a battlefield, Ellie and Nate across from me, their faces closed off, Tom beside them, his eyes heavy with guilt. I was done hiding, done being the ghost in my own home. I'm still here, I said, tears falling, my voice raw. I'm not invisible. The words were a plea, a scream, a last stand against the silence that had swallowed us. Ellie snapped first, her voice jagged, cutting through the air. You smother me, Mom. You never listen. Her words were a blade, slicing open the mother I thought I was. Nate nodded, his silence louder than her anger, his eyes fixed on the table, refusing to meet mine. I wanted to scream, to shake them, to make them see me, but their accusations pinned me down, heavy and true. Tom spoke next, his voice low, confessing he'd hidden his depression, afraid to burden me. Claire's my therapist, he said, the truth a fragile thread, stretched thin by his secrecy. I confessed too, my voice breaking. I read your journal, Ellie. I saw your emails, Tom. I was scared of losing you. The admission hung in the air, raw and ugly, a mirror to my desperation. Ellie's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't speak. Nate's shoulders slumped, his silence softening, but still heavy. Tom reached for my hand, his touch tentative, like he wasn't sure it belonged there. I wanted to believe we could rebuild, but the space between us was a chasm, carved by years of unspoken pain. On the porch, the cold air stung my skin, the night pressing in. I realized the fight wasn't about the letter or the emails. It was about the distance we'd let grow, the love we'd turned into walls. The truth didn't fix us, but it was a start, jagged and raw, a crack letting light into the dark. I stood there shivering, wondering if we could ever find our way back to each other, or if some breaks were too deep to mend. I'm still here, standing in the ashes of a life I thought I'd built, no longer a ghost but a mother, clawing her way back to being seen. The kitchen clock still ticks, relentless, but I'm not running from it anymore. I'm fighting, not for the family I lost, but for the one I might still save. My love was a weight, but it's also a fire, burning away the guilt that chained me, leaving me raw but alive, ready to rebuild from the wreckage of what we were. I started therapy, each session a knife, cutting through layers of shame, revealing the woman I'd buried under my failures. Ellie and I talked, really talked, her tears falling as she admitted my love felt like a cage. I needed space, Bisausi, she said, her voice soft, and I listened, the hurt a necessary wound. Nate opened up too, his voice shaky, confessing his anger came from fear of losing me to my own sadness. His crooked grin flickered, a spark I thought I'd lost, and it lit something in me, fragile but real. Tom and I went to counseling, digging through years of silence, unearthing pain we'd both hidden. His depression, my paranoia. They were walls we'd built, but we're tearing them down, one brittle brick at a time. It's not healed, not whole, but it's a start. Messy and human. In the kitchen, I made pancakes, the air thick with syrup and hope. Ellie sat with me, her fingers tracing the table's grain. Nate grabbed a pancake, his grin fleeting, but there. It was small, a moment, but it was ours. This isn't a fairy tale. It's jagged, unfinished, a fight with no clear end. But I'm here, still loving, still breaking, still building. If this story cracked your heart open, if you've ever fought to be seen, hit that like button. Share your battles in the comments. I want to hear them, to know I'm not alone. Subscribe because we're all clawing our way back, and we're stronger together, one raw, messy truth at a time.